Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about some books. So I have a book haul for you today of all the books that I've bought pretty much since the end of the last book haul that I did. So if you haven't seen that, I will link up below or above and below. It'll be in the description bar as well. A lot of them are by the same author, and if you've watched my most recent reading vlog, you'll know what they are, but they're exciting all the same. And quite a few of these are uni books that I bought for uni, so I'm going to start with those to get those out of the way, and then we can get on to some of the more juicy books. Let's go. The first collection of books that I bought are in the Penguin English Library Collection edition. I do collect these. I'll also link my full collection before these were added. I think it's got everything else apart from these books. So they are beautiful books that they just, on your shelf, look absolutely divine. And they all have very kind of cool front covers as well. So 3 of these books are by the same author, and they are by H.G. Wells. I have read all of these, so they are all in wrap-ups that are on my channel, so I will also link those before. We're getting a good plug in this book in the first few minutes of this video. So yes, we have the 3 books by H.G. Wells are The War of the Worlds, The Island of Dr. Morio. I always say Island of Dr. de Morio, but it's not. It's just Moreau. Island of Dr. Moreau. Don't know why that's so difficult for me, but it is. So we've got that one, and we've got The Time Machine. I'm not the biggest fan of H.G. Wells. I don't think I'll be collecting any more of his books, but he is kind of like a science fiction OG, original, I don't know, classic science fiction writer. So they were interesting to read and see kind of the beginnings of the genre, maybe. I don't actually know if that's true, but there we go. Leo has found something very interesting apparently to play with, so sorry about that. In the background you can actually hear his little feet. And then the 4th English paperback, English library edition that I got is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This is, again, a lovely edition. These books are very floppy, so some people don't like the quality of them, but I mean, I think they're fine. You know, they are just floppy editions. So yes, this one's a bit grim, but there we go. This obviously is Peter Pan. Again, I will get into more detail in my recent video, so I don't want to repeat anything I've said. But I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Even though I'm familiar with the tale, it was nice to read it in its original source. And, you know, it was different than I expected. There were some themes, shall we say, that I wouldn't expect to see in a children's novel that kind of were perhaps eliminated, or when thought about in a bit more detail, weren't so clear in the films that I was more familiar with. So that was a very interesting book. I enjoyed it, would recommend. So the next book that I have here is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. Again, I've read this and it is in a wrap-up. This follows, well, it follows one woman, but we never actually hear from her side. It is split up into 3 sections. The first section is told by her husband, the second section is told by her sister-in-law, and the third section is told by her sister. And it follows this woman as she kind of goes through a crisis where she becomes a vegetarian, but she basically stops eating and her body kind of shuts down, and she ends up being instituted into a mental hospital. And it's a very interesting book, quite a hard book to read, like just topic wise. Trigger warnings for obviously anorexia and kind of food relationships, but also there is a scene of rape in this as well, so just forewarning you before you go into that. Yeah, it was an interesting book. This is actually like a really modern, not very kind of obvious retelling of the story of Daphne and Apollo, which you can read in Ovid's Metamorphosis. So when you know that, I think that adds a very more interesting level. That's not English at all. Adds a different level of depth to the reasoning behind this and the kind of mental state of the woman, because you kind of don't really get an insight into her at all, but once you kind of realise that it's taking that myth and that story into account, I think that definitely adds more to her character and kind of engages in her mindset maybe a little bit more. I don't know if that makes sense, but there you go. So yes, and then this is all for the same module, these next few books, but it was for a creative writing module, and this is The Notes to Self by Emily Pine. It is a collection of essays or personal essays where she talks about her life, and it's got this really funny page in it. Can you see that? Where it's like folded and like it's now like it sticks out of the book. It's a bit weird, but you know, printing errors happen and it adds the uniqueness of my copy. But this I thought was really good. I have read some different reviews that kind of made me think on it a little bit more, and some aspects of it I didn't quite relate to, or I did relate to, as in like I've gone through very similar experiences to some of hers, obviously in totally different contexts as well, and they kind of made me think about my own experiences and how I felt about them, and a lot of the time I didn't feel the same way that she was, or got annoyed at different parts that she was, or didn't seem as upset by them as she was. That makes no sense, especially if you don't know which part I'm talking about in this book if you've read it. But without going into spoilers, it has... Will you stop making noises? It has 6 essays in it. It's only like 200 pages, so they're all quite short. I sped through it, like I really could not put it down really, and it was so easy just to consume, like you just went through it really quickly. Very accessible writing. Some people found it really annoying, I think, but I found it very accessible. So interesting, it's something I've never read before. I've never really read personal essays or tried to write a personal essay. So it was a very interesting week in the creative writing week. The next book I have is The Refugee Tales. This is a collection of short stories, writing tales, I suppose is the best way to describe it, as the title does. Because it's a bunch of writers who have looked into different stories involving refugees and retold it in the way that they want to. So some are in kind of train of thought, some are retelling like a narrative as if like it's in prose, some are just kind of like a back and forth documentation of the interview that they had with the refugee. So it's very, lots of different mediums were used to create it, and it is incredibly insightful. I would highly recommend this if it's something, well, I just would recommend it, even if it's something you're not necessarily interested in, but you think you need to have more awareness about, would definitely recommend. Definitely makes you think about it, and there's a lot about the method and the way refugees are kind of assessed and brought into the country and treated when in the country was eye-opening. I had no idea that these things even existed, so it was a really incredible and eye-opening book to read, and I would highly recommend. I have 2 more books, spoiler, of things that I have bought for my course in science fiction and fantasy again, so flipping back. And these both are children's books once again, and it is Howl's Moving Castle by Diane Wynne Jones and The Wind in the Willows. So Howl's Moving Castle is, I really like it because I'm doing my essay on it, and the more I go into it and the more detailed I'm thinking about it, the more I'm enjoying it. So this obviously follows Howl, and Howl's Moving Castle actually doesn't. Skip that. This follows a girl called Sophie who is working in a hatter shop. Also, I haven't seen the film, but if you have seen the film, apparently it's very different to this. And so I would recommend the book, even though I've never seen the film, so that's probably a bad recommendation, but it is very different. So if you don't want to read this because you have already seen the film, you might be interested in having a look. But this follows a girl called Sophie who, her father has died, and her stepmom decides to put her as a worker in their hat shop. Then one day in the hat shop, a wicked witch of the waste comes into the shop and curses her and turns her into an old woman. So Sophie goes on an adventure to try and get the curse broken, and she kind of butts her way into Howl's castle and becomes friends with Howl, and the story unfolds. This is actually a trilogy, I think. I don't know if I'm going to continue it, just because it kind of is like its own encompassed thing. Like, I don't feel like I need to necessarily, but I really did enjoy it and I would recommend it. Let me know if you think I should read the next one, because I think they would just be fun to read, you know? I don't know. So then we've got The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. This is obviously a children's classic, and I got it in this beautiful V&A, I think, edition. And I really enjoyed this. Again, this is in my wrap-up, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lovely little story. Very humbling. Reminded me of my childhood days, even though I didn't read this as a child, but I read similar things about animals and like going around their little life. So I enjoyed it. I'd recommend. Alright. Yeah. Look up there. No? No. So the next couple of books I actually bought for uni, but I bought them for my dissertation, just doing a bit of research, and they are all ancient Greek literature. We have the Jason and the Golden Fleece by Apollonius of Rhodes. I don't think I'm saying that right. And then we have the Library of Greek Mythology by Apollodorus. And we also have this chunky beast of a book, and that is the Iliad by Homer, obviously. So where should we begin? Let's start. Jason and the Golden Fleece. This is obviously the story of Jason and the Golden Fleece. Not much more to say about that. It was okay. I have almost read all of it. I got to about there. I mean, it's not even very long. It's only like 130 pages, I think. But it was just a little bit, I don't know, dry. I think the ending, when there was action going on, it was great and I loved it. But the bits in between, like the travel bits, were just a bit drawn out, which is fine. I'm sure, you know, it's fine. But the bits that I was interested in were kind of the bits with like Media and Thetis and that kind of thing, because that's obviously, well, not obviously, you have no idea, but that's what I'm talking about kind of more in my dissertation as well, so that's kind of the area that I was interested in. I realise this has like a boob on the front. Am I allowed to show that? I mean, it's a painting. Am I allowed to show that on YouTube? I don't know. I'll censor it for this last little bit anyway. But yes, and the next one has some drawings of peepees too, so we're getting all the body parts out. But yes, I don't know. I think it's interesting, and especially if you want to know the story, go for it. But then this one also has the same story but in a much more condensed version. I haven't read all of this. I've only read sections of this, but it's kind of a accumulation, a compilation, shall we say, of all kind of basic Greek mythology that you ever need to know. It has everything in there. So if you've read Stephen Fry's Mythos, this is kind of like the same idea, but like from the original. Yeah. It's a great source, and I do want to read all of it, but obviously I've been focused mainly on the bits that concern Thetis, but I can't wait to read all of this. And then of course, finally we have the Iliad by Homer. I read most of this, but again, it took me a very long time to get through, but I do have to finish it, and I think I have to read like another two editions or two versions of it for my course that I'm doing next term, which is all on Homer, so obviously that's fair enough, you know. If you're only doing two books, you might as well read multiple versions of that book. But it is a chunky boy, this one. It does have like 100 or so pages at the start of just kind of resources and stuff, and like citations and introductions and maps and pronunciation and stuff like that, and the same at the back. So yeah, but it's also in this beautiful, deluxe edition. It's got like deckled edges, and it's like shiny, and it's got a cool illustration on the front. What more could you want? Whilst we're on Greek classics, I also bought the Silence of the Gods. I've already read this, and it's an incredible book, but I wanted my own version of it, and I thought I was going to be doing my dissertation using this book. I'm not anymore. I'm going to do the Song of Achilles, so I wanted my own edition. I borrowed my mum's before, where I could like draw on it, write on it and everything, and kind of mark up, which I think I will do, because I think I will read this because it's an incredible book. And if you haven't read it and you're at all interested in kind of retellings, feminism, showing kind of the trauma, like just the raw trauma that women had to go through in like the ancient world, and kind of that side of things that have been forgotten in the original sources, etc., and translations of those sources, then this book is incredible. Obviously, trigger warning, it is quite brutal, it's quite raw, there is rape scenes in this. It is not a pretty book, despite the cover. On the inside, it is quite upsetting, but in a way that kind of like just shows the reality and the kind of the raw side of things on like kind of, yeah. Am I making sense? I don't know. But it was incredible, so I would recommend. So I bought my own copy of this because it was also 2 for 1, I think. So there we go. So, special edition. I've got a book. For special editions of books that I bought, I have this beautiful baby. So this is The Lives of Saints by Leigh Bardugo. It is a collection of short stories telling about the lives of saints that are kind of talked about and worshipped, I don't know, but they're definitely talked about and discussed as kind of historical figures in her three series. They're not really a part to do with the duology, the Six of Crows duology, but they do play a much more bigger part in the Grishaverse trilogy and her King of Scars duology. The second part I think is coming out soon. But if you know, if you've been following me for however long I've been on here, which is nearly a year, crazy stuff, but I read the third book in the Grishaverse trilogy and the first King of Scars book in the duology over the summer, and the reason it took me so long to get to King of Scars, even though it's been out for ages, was because I didn't want to read the third book in the trilogy because I hated the first two books, like really disliked them, found them really boring, did not like them. What are you doing, Roman? Didn't like them, so it took me like 2 years to get around to reading this third book, and I was surprised. I actually really enjoyed the third book. Upped its game. I flew through it, and then I flew through King of Scars. Six of Crows will always be my bae, and I will always love it forever. But they were incredible books, so I just had to get this one. And this is the Illumina Crate edition, so it's got these gorgeous like dust jacket, and you know, and then that's the inside, and it's got like, you know, beautiful stuff. And it is also just, yeah, it's a very beautiful book. It has illustrations through all of it, so it is incredible. Like it is just like incredible. I'm thinking of doing a 24-hour readathon in December, and I think I'm gonna keep it to read during then because, you know, it's nice and short, and even just the pages, like the pages all got so much detail, and it's just a lovely creation. But yeah, don't they just like these like fairy tale vibe illustrations just make me want to read it. I'm very much in a fairy tale mind. Everything I'm doing is around fairy tales or retellings or anything, so it gets a tick from me. We've got The Poppy War by R.F. Kang. I haven't read this, it's on my TBR, hoping to start it this week if I can get my butt together and actually finish the book that I'm reading at the moment, but it is being raved about everywhere. I actually don't know much about it. I have avoided kind of everything to do with it because I do not want it to be spoiled for me. The third book has just come out, so I need to get on to reading it, and it is just every time I say, oh, I need to read this, everyone says, oh my gosh, it's amazing, you really do. So I need to read it. I need to read it. And then another book that has been raved about and I really need to read is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. And it's just, again, I have no idea what it's about because I've avoided everything. I haven't even read the blurb. Don't want to know. I just want to get into it. I just want to read it. This is a completed trilogy, I think. So I can literally just marathon it. But why have I not read it? I don't know. I don't know. Oh, my battery's running out. If this cuts out, terribly sorry. I'm gonna speed up. So yes, I need to read it. Okay, the next book that I bought, which was a bit of an impulse buy, and it was The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turnton, and I really enjoyed it. It is a beautiful book. Look at these end pages and appreciate. So this is a book about a detective who gets kind of arrested, and he doesn't know why he's arrested, gets taken on this ship, and then when he's on the ship, his best friend, who is our protagonist, kind of has to uncover this mystery that's going on board, and that kind of has to do with the devil and like people being possessed and a boat. It's a great book. I did a reading vlog where I read most of it in it. I talk about it on there, and obviously at the end of the month I will do a wrap up and this will be there in more detail. But I'm trying not to make this video really long and battery's gonna die. So it was a great book. Wait for the video. So the kind of final book that I bought, or second to final book, is The Piranesi by Suzanne Clarke. I started reading this and it's a little bit weird, so I stopped and I thought I will just take this when I can focus on it a little bit more. So that's what I'm gonna do. It's again another beautiful book, funny size. Like if you look at another hardback, it's like oddly shaped. It's slightly longer and slightly shorter, but you know, each their own, whatever. But it is a bit of a weird book. I'm not really sure how to take it at the moment. It seems to be written as a diary. Guess what? The battery ran out, but we've got you charging now. It's great. I can charge this camera whilst filming, which is an absolute lifesaver because I always forget to charge the battery. But as I was saying, it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. It seems to be written as a diary. Not 100% sure. Not really sure. I didn't give it enough time, to be fair. I only read like 10 pages, which is definitely not enough time to read a book or judge a book or even get what it's about. So again, can't really tell you much about it. Hopefully when I do my 24-hour readathon, I will also read this because it's a nice little skinny one. So I'm intrigued by this. So the final person I'm gonna say, instead of book, is one that if you read or watched my last reading vlog, you will know what these are because I unboxed them. But I have a nice hefty stack of Brandon Sanderson. In there, a big one. So I went online and I was searching for The Way of Kings because obviously the last book is coming out, and yes, I just remembered 2 more books. Okay, Brandon Sanderson, we're gonna imagine on this pile there is another book, and that is The Rhythm of War, because I have actually bought that book. It is waiting for me in my house back home, not my uni house, but I ordered it to the wrong house address, so it's there waiting for me. And another book that is there waiting for me is Troy by Stephen Fry, so that is also in this book haul, but not in this book haul because it's not actually here. But it is another beautiful book that I can't wait to read because I love Stephen Fry, I love his retellings of Greek mythology, and I like the story of Troy. So Brandon Sanderson, we're going to imagine Rhythm of War is on this pile, but I pre-ordered it basically because I wanted it. And then I thought, actually, you know what, funny that, I should probably read the books in before the series, so before I actually read that one. So I decided to buy it, and they're like these, like, because they're all split up into, there's only 3 books before Rhythm of War, but they're all split up into 2 parts, and each part is $9.99. It's 10 freaking pounds for one book. There's 6 books you have to buy, so that's £60. I don't have that money. So I managed to find a box set where they were £30, I think, like £40 maybe, £39.99 maybe, I don't know, but that's still like a £20 saving. So I bought that basically, and then because I wanted free shipping and you needed £50 I think, or something like that, or I think it, yeah, I don't know, to do that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to read them at some point, so I might as well buy the trilogy for the second Mistborn era, which I will read after I've read the Rhythm of War one as well. So we have the Way of Kings Part 1 and Part 2, we have the Words of Radiance Part 1 and Part 2, and then we have Oathbringer Part 1 and Part 2, and then I still haven't figured out which order these books go in, so if someone would mind in the comments letting me know, that would be absolutely splendid. But we have the Bands of Mourning, the Ally of Law, and the Shadows of Self all in this edition and this trilogy. So absolutely fabulous. One of my favourite things is in Oathbringer Part 1 and Part 2. Look at that. Absolutely incredible. I'm easily impressed, but I thought that was great. I really did. So that's the end of the book haul. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I wasn't too manic. I feel like I've just gone blah, 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 blah. But there's not really much else to say, except if you did like the video, please give it a like. If you liked the video and would like to see more, please subscribe. It really does help my channel, and I would love to see you again in the next video. So I'll see you then.